Hey, Motorman here, and this week we're going to talk about motorcycling is 90% mental and only 10% physical. You might have heard that said before by other people. I certainly didn't invent it, but I'm going to show you that it is true. And why it's true is because most people ride using their instincts, and riding well is the opposite of your instincts. That's why you have to come to people like me to become a really skillful rider, and you have to learn technique, especially the 3 techniques I teach: the proper use of your head and eyes, which you use at all speeds. That is, wherever you turn your head and eyes, that's where the motorcycle will go, because eventually your hands will follow your eyes. As you get trained in that technique, it will come very quickly. Turn your head and eyes, the bike will come right around immediately. The other technique, proper use of the clutch and throttle, known as the friction zone, and the proper use of the rear brake being just a little bit of a helper. It's 95% in your clutch and throttle. Once you get down really good at the clutch and throttle using that friction zone, you can just about eliminate the rear brake, or maybe give it an occasional little bit of pressure just to adjust your speed slightly. Mainly your speed adjustment is with the clutch, letting it in or out within the friction zone. And I want to tell you, because a lot of people see my videos on YouTube and they hear me, they think I'm yelling at the riders. I'm not yelling at them. I'm yelling because when they're on motorcycles, they're 20, 30, 50 feet from me. If I don't raise my voice, they can't hear me. And when you raise your voice and you repeat the same thing over and over again, it may sound like I'm yelling at them, but I'm really not. I just want them to hear me, and I repeat the same thing over and over again, because when you're learning this stuff and you're really tense, it takes a little while for the voice to go into the ears and to go into the brain and down to the hands. So I'll say, turn your head, turn your head. I'll say it several times until they actually start to do it, because there is a big delay in that. And I also want you to know that I believe that we laugh the hardest when we laugh at ourselves. So before my class starts, I tell the people, I'm going to use everything I've got to make you the best rider I could possibly make within 4 hours. And I'm going to be using positive motivation, negative motivation, sarcasm, humor, everything I've got. Whatever I think is going to work for you, I'm going to use it. And then I say, now raise your hand if anybody has a problem with what I just said. And 99% of the time, in fact, nobody's ever raised their hand and said, yes, I'm a wuss, please don't yell, don't make fun of me or laugh. I'm not making fun of people. I'm trying to make them laugh, because you're more relaxed when you're laughing. This class is very intense, therefore the people tend to get intense. So if I can make them laugh, they're going to learn a little bit quicker and see that it's not all that serious. Have some fun with it. So let's take a look at the video, and I'll give you an example of some of the things that I tell the riders. And you may notice in this that I tell them the same things over and over again, because it's got to sink in. And there's no new mistakes. In 23 years, I've seen every mistake a rider is going to make, and it's almost always the same mistakes over and over again. Therefore, what I tell them is sometimes the same thing over and over again, sometimes in different ways, to make sure that it sinks in. So let's take a look at the video. You're looking down. You're supposed to be looking ahead. Turn your head. What are you doing over here? You're supposed to be over there. If you look down at the ground, you tend to go down. Now, this is a BMW GS, extremely maneuverable motorcycle. You got to dip a little more. You hit the cone with your bag. Those bags are big. You got to slow down a little bit and look ahead. Too slow. This is very typical. Very hard to control the bike at 2 or 3 miles an hour. Yes. 8 or 10 is easy. Right. Look ahead, get those bars moving, stay in that friction zone and swing and sway. Much better. Turn your head. Look right here. Turn your head at me. At me. There you go. Here's the exercise from the drone shot. In a very short amount of time, usually within a half hour, most of the riders get the hang of it. Got to get that bike swinging and swaying, get over your fear of anything horrible befalling you just because you're turning the bars quickly. As long as your speed is above 5 miles an hour, the bike can't fall over. If it's below 5 miles an hour, yeah, there's a good chance it could fall over. That's because 5 miles an hour or below, the force of gravity is greater trying to pull you to the ground than the force pulling you forward. Now, this rider on the BMW, he's been at the class before, and he does a lot of practicing on his own, so I basically don't even have to say anything to him because he already knows it. Occasionally, I'll say, if I notice a slight mistake or something, he could do a little bit better. But the other riders hadn't been here before. It's pretty much constant coaching as we go along, and as the class gets a little bit later on, the less I really have to tell him. This rider on the Indian, he was having some serious problems using way too much rear brake. You're going to see him tip his bike over and pick it up without getting off the bike. It's a rare rider that can do that, but this guy is like 6'8". He told me he went into the woods once and Bigfoot took his picture.
Under 5 miles an hour, there's more force pulling you to the ground than pulling you forward. And you're going about 4 miles an hour. Lean the opposite way of the bike. Tighten up that circle. Turn your head. That one was better.
Being that this rider on the BMW had been here before and does a lot of practicing on his own, he wants to be challenged. So the way I set up the course, I can make it more difficult or easier. This is the most difficult way because that's actually motor officer size between the little orange cone and the big orange cone. That's what I had him do, and he had no problem with it.
Okay, what you doing wrong? You get in, you dip, you get a little closer to the green cone, but as soon as you start to turn, yes, you straighten up your bike, straighten your handlebars. That makes your bike go straight 3 or 4 feet. That makes the turn too sharp for you, right?
Yes.
So don't do that. Get it in it and let that bike lean. You were doing it in that very first exercise. By now, it should be, you understand that. You gotta let it lean. It turns by leaning. If you straighten up your handlebars even a split second in the middle of that turn, that's gonna put you 2 or 3 feet in the wrong direction. All right? So go ahead.
Since this rider's having some problems with this exercise, yet he has a lot of determination, no quitting this guy, I had my assistant take him aside and bring him to the previous exercise and work on him one-on-one. He did that for about 20 minutes or so, and that turned his riding around really fast. Sometimes just a little one-on-one really helps.
Looked at it. Yeah. You don't like that cone?
I don't like it.
That's my favorite cone.
That's what I felt. I know.
By the time we get to this exercise, most of the riders have a real good handle on the techniques. Occasionally, I just tell them to turn their head a little bit faster and find that green cone sooner. This rider who was having serious problems turning his head before has really improved tremendously in a very short amount of time. He's not afraid of that motorcycle, not afraid to lean it. All he needs is a little bit of smoothness. This rider who also had real problems with turning his head claimed he had some neck problems, and that's very possible. But as long as you get your eyes around, yeah, you can do it. As you can see here, he's improved tremendously as well. We're about 3 hours into the course here, and this is the most difficult exercise with the most amount of cones. As Tom Hanks once said in a movie, there's no crying in baseball. Well, there's no crying in motorcycling or learning to ride really well. This is not a sport for wimps. I guarantee you, you got to toughen up if you're going to ride a motorcycle.